Something really weird happened a while back. I was at home one night in my apartment. I don't remember exactly what time it was, but I think that it was kind of late. I just remember hearing my phone vibrating a ways away from me, and I went over to look. When I did, I saw that I was getting a call, but it was from a random number that I didn't know. It was strange because normally the toll-free calls and telemarketers would be during the day. Out of curiosity, I decided to answer the phone. I'm not really sure why looking back, but I did. When I picked up, I said hello. There was at first just silence on the other end. I said hello again a few seconds later. Then, finally, someone spoke. A man on the other end finally said, "I guess I have the wrong number." I said, "Okay." Then he hung up. I figured that it was an innocent mistake of him just dialing wrong. I didn't think too much of it. The whole thing was a little bit weird, but nothing to be suspicious about. The very next night, it was a similar situation, and I was home by myself, as I live alone in my apartment. This time, I know that it was really late. In fact, I was just about to go to bed, but my phone started ringing again. I had remembered the call from the night before. When I looked, it was once more a number that I didn't have saved. It very well could have been the same number from the previous night, but I didn't definitively recognize it at the time. I answered again and said hello. Once more, there was at first silence, but then I heard a man say hello. I recognized the voice, and it was the same guy from yesterday. I said something like, "Oh, it's you again." I then asked him who he was trying to call. I was wondering who my number was getting confused with. But the guy didn't answer me. Instead, he just asked me what my name was. I gave him my first name, and then he said okay, and then just hung up. I was really confused. The whole thing was pretty strange. I mean, why would he call me again if it was the wrong number? Wouldn't he have learned from his mistake? Not too long after this, I went to bed. The next morning, I woke up and saw that I had about 10 missed calls on my cell phone. This was really weird. I looked, and they were all from that same number. Why did this guy keep calling me? I also saw that he left one voicemail. Out of curiosity, I decided to play it. When I did, the first thing that I heard was a man breathing. It sounded like he was moving around, maybe walking or something. His breathing into the phone continued for about 10 or 15 seconds, but he didn't say anything. Then I suddenly heard the sound of glass breaking. It was really loud, like he shattered a window or something like that. The voicemail then abruptly ended. When I heard this, I was super creeped out. Right then and there, I blocked the number. My apartment was fine. He didn't break the windows there because I was on the 5th floor. But nevertheless, I looked around and made sure that everything was fine, which it was. The building was fine too, so I'm not sure what glass he broke. Since then, I haven't heard from the guy. I have received no more strange calls. However, I still wonder who that guy was and what he was doing. This happened many years ago. I was much younger and a single man living on my own. I was out with a friend one night watching the game at a bar. I remember that he had to leave early for whatever reason, so I stayed there by myself because I wanted to see the end of the game. I was sitting at the bar, and towards the end of it, I noticed a woman sitting a few seats down. The bar had not really been that busy. I didn't notice when exactly she got there, but I don't think she was there for the whole game. There were other people around. The bar wasn't dead, but it was not super busy either. The woman seemed to be there by herself, and she was just sitting at the bar drinking something. I found her to be attractive, so I was actually thinking of striking up a conversation with her, but she spoke to me first. She looked over and asked if I had bet money on the game. Admittedly, I had bet the over on the score, and I told her that. We got to talking a little bit, maybe like 20 minutes, and before I knew it, the game was over. I thought that it was a good conversation, and shortly after the game, the woman said that she was going to leave. I decided to ask her for her number, and when I did, without hesitation, she said that I could have it. She told me the number, and then I put it in my phone, and she left. I was feeling good about how things had gone. When I talked to her, I was funny, she was laughing, I asked her questions, and she had asked me questions. It seemed like a really good conversation in my opinion. I was excited to hopefully see her again and text with her. The next day, I did something out of character. I was feeling bold, so I decided to call her instead of just text. The way our conversation had gone, I figured that she would not mind. So I called her number sometime in the late morning. She picked up and I heard nothing on the other end. So I spoke. I said, "Hello," and I was literally starting to say something else when the phone call just ended. It was like she had hung up. My heart sank. Then, moments later, I got a text. It said, "Who are you?" I replied with my name and said, "We met last night, remember?" In my mind, there was still a sliver of hope in this moment, and I was hanging on to it, even if that sounds pathetic. She texted back saying, "Huh?" Again, my heart sank. I thought to myself, how would she not remember me? I had spoken to her for a long time, and I knew she wasn't drunk. Sure, both of us had had drinks, but I only had 2 the whole night, and I can confirm that she did not even seem drunk at all. So I decided to try to clear things up by calling her again. I felt that I could explain the situation better over speaking and not texting, so I dialed her back. This time she picked up again, except it was not the girl that I had met at the bar. It was some random guy, and he sounded angry. Obviously I couldn't see the guy, but he sounded large and had a sort of deep and booming voice. Right away he was angry. I thought for a moment maybe he was the woman's husband or boyfriend. He asked who I was and why I kept bothering him, and asked if I was trying to prank him. He said all this without letting me speak. When he was finally done yelling at me, I told him that I had met a girl at a bar last night and she gave me this number. He started yelling at me again, saying that that was the most unbelievable thing he ever heard and that he will not be harassed and he ought to call the cops on me. Then he said, matter of fact, I should come down and find you and beat you myself. I didn't know why this guy was so angry. I asked him if he knew the woman, and he said no, once more going on and on an angry rant. This guy was one of the angriest people I've ever spoken to. So what? I called the wrong number. Is that like the crime of the century? I told him I was sorry and I had the wrong number, and I said I really didn't mean to bother him. He started ranting again, saying I had better leave him alone now. I hung up at that point, cutting him off from another one of his rants. I double-checked the number that I dialed with the number the girl gave me. It was the same. So either she intentionally gave me the wrong number or I wrote it down wrong. Part of me wanted to believe that I just wrote it down wrong, but deep down, I knew the truth. She had given me the wrong number, but it didn't end there. The guy who I called by accident then started texting me. He started spamming me with threatening messages. He was saying how I harassed him and how he was going to find me and hunt me down and get me. After like the 10th text in the span of 2 or 3 minutes, I blocked him. And after that, I didn't get any more of those texts. I went back to the bar a few times over the next several months. I didn't want to see the woman again, but if I did, I was planning to talk to her about giving me the wrong number. However, I never saw her again. I'm still kind of mad about it, but it happens, I guess. For a little background, this happened last year at work. I'm a woman and work in an office building in a pretty typical job. One day, I was bored at work and didn't have a whole lot to do. I got a random phone call kind of out of nowhere. Being bored, I decided to answer it. I did not know who was calling me as the number was not one that I had saved. Everybody who I typically talked to was a contact in my phone. This included friends, family, work people, and really everybody. So this was a little bit strange. When I answered the phone, some random guy said hi to me. I said hi. There was a bit of silence, and then I asked who he was. The man said that he must have the wrong number. I told him no problem. However, he did not hang up the phone. Instead, he started asking me questions. He first asked who I was, and I told him my first name. I thought that that would lead to him telling me who he was trying to call. But then he asked me where I was, and I said I was at work. I didn't tell him where I worked or anything. He then asked if I lived in the city that I did live in, and I said yes, still curious. I was wondering why he was asking me these questions. I remember that he asked me a couple of other things, but I interrupted him and said that I was at work and I really couldn't talk. The guy was starting to seem weird, so he said okay, and then I hung up the phone. I went on with work, and he didn't call back or anything. Probably like the next day or so, I got a random friend request on Facebook from somebody who I did not know. It was a guy, and we had 0 mutual friends. I did not accept it, but I also didn't decline it. I wasn't entirely sure if maybe I knew him somehow, but overall I just kind of ignored it. The next night I got a phone call again from the same number. Now I was at home and not at work. I was curious though, so I decided to answer. When I did, it was the same guy. He told me that he sent me a friend request on Facebook. In the call, he was acting super friendly and nice and told me to accept it. I went on Facebook and did so, I'm not sure why. He started making chit-chat, but I cut it short and said that I had to be going. After ending the call, I went on the guy's Facebook page and looked at it. He seemed pretty weird. The more I looked at it, the more I did not like him. He would just post random weird stuff, and he seemed kinda creepy. Like he would take these selfies with wide eyes and stuff, and he would post like 10 times a day. A few days went by without any contact from him. I had pretty much forgot all about the guy until he messaged me on Facebook. I did not want to talk to him, so I didn't respond and I deleted him, but I forgot to block his number. The next morning, I woke up to a slew of threatening texts. He asked me why I deleted him and even threatened to come to my job, mentioning it by name. I texted back telling him to leave me alone, and then I blocked him. I thought that would do the trick. A few days went by with nothing. Everything seemed fine, and I forgot all about the guy. But then, one day, I was at work again like normal. The way my office is I have sort of a cubicle in a much larger room. It's not quite a full cubicle though, so I can see around the entire office really. I sit at a table with my computer, and there are people kind of all over in the large room. When I was working, I heard some people start talking over near the entrance from the hallway. I looked over, and I saw that guy. I couldn't believe it. He had come to my job. He didn't see me right away, as I was kind of in the back corner of the room, not out of sight, but not that obvious either. I instantly ducked down and hid underneath my desk. My coworker saw me and asked what was going on. Meanwhile, the guy was talking to, I think it was Donald, who's one of the guys that works closer to the door. He was asking who the guy was and what he was doing here. The guy was saying that he was there to see someone, but when questioned, he didn't say who. He tried to walk farther in, and Donald was standing right next to him trying to stop him. I motioned for my coworker to get down for some reason too, so then she hid underneath her desk. I whispered to her the gist of the situation. The guy basically started walking around the office, I guess looking for me, but Donald was eventually able to kind of get him out of the room. He then closed the door and locked it. The guy started knocking on the door and then apparently asked for me, but Donald had it at that point and yelled at him that he was calling the cops. This finally got the man to leave. I then came out and explained to my coworkers the situation. Everyone was pretty confused, and we all agreed that it was crazy. Thankfully, after that, the man did not return, or else we would have called the cops. I still can't believe that the guy actually showed up at my job. I'm not really sure how he found out where I worked and stuff, or how he even got my number. I really have no idea who he was. But I hope that I never see him or hear from him again. I was hanging out in my living room just watching TV in my apartment one night. It was a relaxing evening until my phone rang. When I looked, I saw that it was a number I didn't recognize, so I didn't answer. A short time later, I got a notification that I had a new voicemail. I thought that it was odd how somebody that I didn't know had just called me and left a voicemail. I figured it was some kind of a scam, but I decided to play the message. So I went on my phone and listened to it. A person with a kind of weird voice said, "Marcus, congratulations, call me back." My name is not Marcus. I figured that this person had the wrong number. I had no idea why somebody would be congratulating me or calling me Marcus. I texted the number saying, "I am not Marcus, I think you have the wrong number." Literally right after this, they called me back. I did not like the fact that they had called me instead of texting me, but I decided to answer to try to clear the air. As soon as I said hello, the man with the weird voice said, "Hi Marcus." The way that the guy spoke was just strange. It was not just the way his voice sounded, but also his tone and overall everything. I stopped him and said, "I'm not Marcus, you have the wrong number." The person insisted that I was. He said, "Marcus, congratulations." I was so confused that I was speechless. I literally said nothing. The guy then said, "Congratulations, Marcus," and then he hung up. At that point, I thought that it had to be now a prank. Somebody was pulling a joke on me. Why this was a joke, I had no idea. Who's Marcus? I don't know. I also didn't know who would be doing this because I didn't recognize the voice at all. I also have all my friends' numbers saved. It just didn't sound like a voice changer though, or one of those AI voices. There just seemed to be too much emotion in it. It sounded human. A short time later, they called again, which I let go to voicemail. The person left a voicemail once more, and when I listened to it, I only got more confused. The person calling said, "I'm calling you to say that you are Marcus, and I don't know why you keep denying it. Call me back when you have a chance, and congratulations." This was so weird. I didn't know what was going on. I did not call the person back. I didn't respond by text either. I really didn't know what to do. A few days went by, and I had no more calls or texts from this person. Then I came home to my apartment one evening to find an envelope at my front door. I picked it up, went inside, and then opened it. There was a letter that said at the start of it, "Congratulations, Marcus." The letter went on to say a whole bunch of nothing. It was typed out with a basic font. There was a lot of big words that sounded really complicated, but in my mind it pretty much added up to a whole lot of nothing. In the end though, I noticed that it said I had to pay them $10,000. I had no idea why. I ripped up the letter and threw it away. Since then, I have not received any more letters or calls or anything. But the fact that this person went to my apartment and knows where I live really creeps me out. I'm hoping that it was just a prank put on by a friend, but I just don't know who would do that or why. It just seems so random. This happened many years ago in the 1990s. I was in high school at the time and lived with my parents and older sister at home. I was constantly using my phone to talk to my friends on almost a daily basis. This was before social media, obviously, and was before texting was really that popular. Every time I would call my friends, I would dial the entire number. There was speed dial and stuff like that, but I just didn't really use it. I had all my friends' numbers memorized, and I could dial really fast. So on this particular night, I was at home by myself. My parents were gone somewhere, I don't remember where, and so was my sister. I was going to call my friend Jacqueline and ask if she wanted to come over and hang out because I was bored. We would hang out at each other's places all the time. I think it must have been a Friday night, because normally I wouldn't have called people to hang out that late. And also, I don't think my parents and sister would have been out late on a weeknight. Anyways, after I dialed Jacqueline's number, I remember that she picked up. As soon as she did, I just started talking. We were such good friends and called each other so much that we really didn't say, "Hello, who's there?" We had caller ID as well, so we would know when each other was calling. As soon as I heard her pick up, I just said, "Hey, I'm bored, my parents and sister are gone, so I'm just home by myself. What are you doing? Do you want to come over?" After I said this, there was just silence on the other end. I said, "Hello?" Then the phone call ended as the other line hung up. I was confused. Why would my best friend Jacqueline hang up on me? And why wouldn't she say anything? So I dialed her again to call her back. I was thinking that it had to be a mistake and we just randomly got disconnected or something. This time when I called her, she picked up again. Except this time she said, "What's up?" I asked her if she had just hung up on me. She said no. I told her how I had just called her, and she said that she did not get any calls from me until just now. I was confused for a moment, until I realized that I must have dialed the wrong number before. Perhaps I got one of the digits wrong, and someone else had picked up. This was kind of awkward, because I had actually talked to them. Why would they not say anything, though? Either way, it was not too big of a deal, but just slightly embarrassing. So I went on to ask Jacqueline if she wanted to come over, but she said she could not because she was about to watch a movie with her parents. So we talked for maybe a minute longer and then hung up. After that, I just decided to go to the living room and see what was on TV or something like that. So around 30 minutes later probably, as I was there on the couch in the living room, I heard a knock on the front door. This was really strange because it was nighttime. All the windows were covered, so I had no idea who would be there. I was instantly creeped out. After a pause of maybe 30 seconds, they knocked again. This time I went over to a front window and very carefully looked out of it. It was dark outside, but I could tell that a man was standing there. However, I could not see any details about him. He then tried to open the door, which thankfully was locked. I was now freaking out. Some random guy was trying to break in, it seemed. He then turned and walked away. I only saw his backside as he made his way to the street. I just remember that he was wearing a jacket, so I couldn't really tell what he looked like at all. The whole thing really freaked me out, but I was glad that he was now gone. It wasn't until a few minutes later that I wondered if he was the person that I accidentally called. I mean, I had mentioned that I was home alone, and I had also dialed a number in the same area code, so he would be local. But how he got my exact address, I'm not sure. It could also just be a crazy coincidence, but I don't think it was. After that, he never came back. But I often remember that and wonder if it was the same guy, and if so, how he knew where I lived exactly. I'm just glad that he never returned.